So, hello everyone. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Hayden Davison. Hope you're all doing fantastic. Got something quite exciting today. So I am going to be doing a deep dive on VAT registration. So that period for whether you're an online arbitrage seller, a wholesale seller, private label seller. This video is going to be specifically for online arbitrage sellers because that's what I do, and that's what I did when I was converting. But I'm sure it will still be very valuable if you are doing the other methods of selling as well. But specifically, this is for online arbitrage. So, and I'm actually, what we're going to be doing is going over the preparation. We're going to talk about what VAT is. We're going to be able to talk about preparing for VAT registration and what you need to do, what you need to know. Some things that I found really, really overwhelming myself when I was preparing for VAT. It took me 2 or 3 days to get my head around the whole process. I was asking questions in groups all over the place, YouTube videos, couldn't really find much on YouTube about it. So we're going to talk about preparing for VAT, and then we're going to do sort of top tips for VAT. Now, it's quite exciting because I'm joined by a specialist senior e-commerce accountant from Awesome, who's Timer. So welcome, Timer.
Thank you, Hayden. Again, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So it's great to have a Timer on this call because it means that that we can actually sort of deep dive a bit further, just so that you guys watching have got some more reassurance from an expert. Because obviously I'm not an expert on tax or VAT accounting, but I actually use Awesome myself as accountant. So it's great to have them on the call here. So without further ado, what I'm going to do now is just hand over to Timer. And he's going to do a deep dive on sort of, let's first of all just go into sort of what VAT is. So Tom, if you wouldn't mind just giving us an overview, I don't know, between 3 to 5 minutes of just what VAT is and why it's important.
Sure. Look, VAT, value added tax. It's one of the most common things that we face on day in, day out, but it's also one of the most complex things that we don't understand completely. And when we get into a business ourselves, it is very crucial to understand how it works, because it can deplete you out of cash very quickly because it's payable on spot. So VAT, in a very simplistic term, is a tax that you collect on behalf of HMRC, the tax authorities. But the way it works is that when you're providing a service or goods like an e-commerce arbitrage, and you're selling it on different platforms, you have to charge VAT at a certain point. And when you get to the certain point, you start charging VAT and collect that money on behalf of HMRC from your customers and pay it back to HMRC. So it's called a consumption tax, which means that anytime your product is consumed by someone, they need to pay that tax for consuming that product. Now, there are certain thresholds and certain limitations on it. And we'll talk about it in more detail, but just to get some basics on it, when you're VAT registered, as I said, you charge VAT, but on the other side, you are paying VAT on many other items as well, because you're buying goods from different, as an arbitrage, you buy goods from different markets. And when you pay for that, you probably get a receipt in which you see a VAT invoice on it as well. So you are paying VAT in it as well. So you're paying VAT and you're charging VAT. The difference is what you need to calculate on a regular basis and pay back to HMRC. So as an overview, that's how simple and that's how it is basically. But when we go deep dive in, let's say you start a business, you do not need to worry about being a VAT registered unless you get up to £85,000 sale in UK alone. Now that means that not the money that you're receiving in your bank account after Amazon or Shopify payouts, but the actual sales that you have made, the actual price that you sold your items for. So when that reaches £85,000, then it becomes an obligatory duty for you to register for VAT and start charging your clients VAT. Which means that at that point, you either have to increase your price, the 20% extra, to charge your end consumer, or you want to be competitive, you keep the price the same, and you reduce your profit margin. So being a VAT registered business can have a very impactful situation on your business financially, because either you charge more and become less competitive, or you charge less and have a dip in your margins. But always remember, as I said, you can also claim back everything that you've paid for as well. So, but that's not the only part. So up until £85,000, after that, it becomes mandatory. But before then, you can register for VAT on situations where you are selling zero-rated items and you are paying a lot of VAT. So what happens is that you're selling items which are not VATable. So you're selling it on zero rate, but you're paying a lot of VAT. So it means that you can claim a lot back from HMRC. So when you are thinking about VAT, you normally think about just, you will have to now pay a lot of money. It depends on what type of product you're selling as well. So it's really important for you to first understand how VAT works, what kind of product it involves, and then make a decision on how actually VAT is, because you can do a voluntary registration as well.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks, Clara. So I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. That was just a quick, brief overview of what VAT is. Now, obviously, if you're still with us, I do think it's really important that you watch this whole video through to get the full value from this. You don't really, if you're looking to prepare for that, I'm really hoping that we can cover the majority of it in this video. So there's no need to look for the videos on YouTube that don't exist, because trust me, I've tried to find them and they don't exist as far as I'm aware. So it's really good to have this video, watch the whole thing through so that you can prepare for VAT yourself. So great. So without further ado, preparation for that and what you need to know beforehand. So what's going to happen here is I'm just going to run through a few questions that I've got, or a few queries that I had, questions when I was starting out, just so that you don't have to do the due diligence that I had to do on every single subject beforehand. So and then I'm going to ask Timer to sort of jump in where I think he could add some more value as well. So the first of all, it's just Timer, unless I'm mistaken, is it 85 or is it 86,000 pounds threshold?
85,000 pounds.
85, right? Okay, sorry, my mistake. So it's 85,000, and it's important to monitor that and monitor your sales on Amazon. And now this is an important question that I wasn't sure to start with, and a lot of Amazon sellers didn't know this either. And that is it 85,000? I mean, I know this, but for the audience, is it 85,000 pounds sales on Amazon, or is that 85,000 that's gone through your bank accounts within that year?
It's the actual sales on Amazon. So the sales that your customers on Amazon have paid you before any deductions of Amazon pieces. So it's the first figure on your sales.
Right. Okay. And that's something that I thought was sort of unfair to start with when I found that out. But it is, yeah, it was good to have that confirmed, because I almost got stung when with an old accountant I used that wasn't an e-commerce specialist, which is obviously so important to have. They thought it was through the bank account. So that was very scary there. So yeah, it's important to understand, everyone, that it is Amazon sales. It's based on the sales, not the money through the account on the on the balance sheet, that sort of thing.
And also do know, because I do get a lot of clients who have this misunderstanding, because obviously that's what they've been told before. But if you do that, then you'll probably be late on your VAT registration 2-3 months, because it's basically 85,000 pounds in 12 months period, and you probably are just, after deducting, you're just getting the net figures, which can delay you. And when HMRC comes in, if they knock your door, they will go for the actual sales figures, and they'll probably ask you to pay the VAT for the last 2 months, plus some penalties and stuff, because they won't take an answer saying that, oh, you did not know. Everything is out there on HMRC's website. You should have known. So it could be crucial for you.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and that's why it's so important to have a proper e-commerce accountant. And by the way, whilst we're here, everyone, I'm going to drop my link to Awesome down below. Now, feel free, obviously, to not use that and go and just find them yourselves without me. But they've been quite kind to me and actually offered me and said that if someone does use that link, or if you want to use my name and mention my name when you are signing up with Awesome, then you will actually get £100 off your first month with Awesome if you decided to use them. And it's just so important to use an Amazon specialist accountancy firm, because I have been stung in the past. A lot of accountants don't know what they're doing. But as I say, obviously I'm not worried. Feel free to just go and speak to another accountant, or go and contact Awesome yourself. But if you did want to use my name or link, then obviously we appreciate the support on the channel, and obviously you can get £100 off your first month. So I just wanted to let you know that that's there, but obviously go ahead and do your own due diligence as well if you want to. So anyway, without further ado, let's move on to the next question. So creating something else I got confused about was just the sort of organisation around VAT. And I realised quite quickly how important it is to create monthly folders and collect your VAT receipts, obviously. But an important thing to know, which I didn't know until sort of, it was almost too late, was actually that anything you sell after you hit the £85,000 threshold on Amazon sales, you need a VAT receipt for that. So you need to, what I would suggest you do, and obviously we can pass over to Timer in a minute, how he's sort of dealt with this or heard people do this, is I actually created a folder for anything that was still selling over the £85,000 threshold. Because you need a VAT receipt for that. That means that you're going to have to contact the retailer, supplier, wherever you got that, and you need to get VAT receipts for that. So it's if you create that folder, that means that if you feel like you're like £10,000 or £5,000 away from the threshold, I think that a top tip would be to actually create a folder and actually start collecting VAT receipts before you go over the VAT threshold, because otherwise you're going to have a big backlog to chase. So I don't know what you think about that, Timer.
And definitely that's a great advice, and it makes an accountant's life easier as well, because it's very easy for us to chase for the documents and see where they are. But I would say to add one thing on it, like VAT is a really big aspect of your business, but then again, you also have corporation tax. So if you have not hit £85,000, you still need to declare your corporation tax, and the rules are almost same, that you need an invoice to claim any expenses. So let's say you make £100,000 in a year, and your cost were total 50,000 or 60,000. To claim that, you need to show all the paperwork in place, and that paperwork means your invoices, as you mentioned. So even for before £85,000, like any invoices that you ever pay, always try to keep a copy of it saved somewhere, and a soft copy is more than acceptable. So create folders. What we do here at Awesome is we have given you an app that has a file system, and anything that you send to us, taking a photo from your phone and stuff, gets stored here. There. But if you're not using Awesome, you're using your own platform, create your online folders. Make sure you have a backup as well, because if something happens to your laptop, that's there. You need to maintain that data for at least 5 years. If HMRC knocks your doors, they can ask you for last 5 years worth of accounts, last 5 years worth of invoices. Let's say you've been claiming a lot of invoices, and HMRC knocks your doors. They say, okay, we need to see this £5,000 worth of invoice on 2018. And if you're not able to provide that invoice, then HMRC will penalize you, and they'll probably fine you on something. So you need to make sure it's there. It's just to save your back as well, because without that, you cannot claim the VAT back, and you cannot probably do the corporation tax on it either.
Wow, great, yeah, that's really important. Yeah. Whilst we're on that note of getting VAT receipts from suppliers, by the way, just whilst we're touching on that already, some retailers, in my experience, do actually refuse to give you a VAT receipt. Now, it is actually once you're VAT registered, correct me if I'm wrong, Timer, it is a legal obligation for them to give you a receipt, isn't it? But in the 1% circumstances where they refuse, is that dangerous for the seller to not have a VAT receipt?
Yes, because I have got a few arbitrage clients, and what I've been on touch with HMRC on quite a few moments to understand how it actually works, because I think Boots is one of the really complicated one, where they don't provide a VAT invoice or don't provide it in time. So what HMRC clearly set out was, no, if you don't have a VAT invoice, you cannot claim the money back. So if you've paid, let's say £10, you have £2 extra VAT on them, you cannot claim it back without the extra VAT invoice. So when you're doing an Amazon arbitrage and you're VAT registered now, it could be a big chunk of money that you could be losing out. So first of all, make sure you're dealing with a company who can provide you that VAT invoice. If they can't, then you have to use judgment on it to see, was there VAT applicable on this invoice? But again, how do you justify that? HMRC will ask you things like, how can you differentiate, was it not personal and it was actually a business transaction or not? So it becomes really complicated. You can even if you try to claim it and HMRC knocks your doors, it will not go your way. So my answer to that would be, try to deal with the people who can provide you a VAT invoice, and then try to only use those.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think if it's a well-known store, obviously, it's probably less risk, isn't it? Because they know that it's a accredited thing. But there is always that risk that HMRC, if they come knocking and they do a test, and you're going to be in trouble, aren't you? So there is a risk there.
Yeah, as I said, Boost is probably well known, but they could always be a risk, and they will ask you tons of questions. And if you're not able to justify those questions, you will lose on that money.
Yeah. So my advice from someone that does say I've been doing it for about a year and a half and has had issues in the past, guys, any retailer that consistently refuses to give me a VAT receipt, I stop dealing with them just because it's not worth the risk. That's just how I do it. And most people are pretty good. 99.9% are good, and they're fine. Cool, awesome. So the next question I had, something else that flagged up to me that I found overwhelming was, there's a little gap, so that when you become VAT registered, so when you hit the £85,000 threshold, you've got to then apply to be VAT registered, and then you could be at 95, at £100,000 in sales by the time you actually give your VAT number to Amazon, and then they stop charging you the VAT. So this is really important to cover as well. So that little period in between the 85,000 and whatever until you give Amazon your VAT code, timer, do we need to ask Amazon for that money back, or do we need our specialist e-commerce accountant or whoever's dealing with our books to actually claim that back from HMRC?
So Amazon will obviously probably not help you with the claiming that back, because Amazon is charging you on their invoices. What will happen is when you reach on £85,000, you get up until the 1st of next month to have your effective date. So even though let's say you reach your £85,000 on the 15th of the month and you registered on that day, your effective date will be the 1st of the next month. So from 1st of the next month, regardless of when you get your VAT registration and certificate, 1st of the month is when you are actually a VAT registered business. So from then on, you can ask Amazon to reverse the expenses that they've given you, because that's when you got VAT registered business. But if they can't, then obviously we need to claim that VAT back on a HMRC. So your accountant will do that. So just be mindful of that. It's not that as soon as you hit £85,000, that's it, you're VAT registered business from that day. No. You need to hit £85,000, and on the next period, when your effective date is, then you need to start charging VAT and become a VATable business, basically.
Yeah. And by the way, whilst we're on this subject, guys, this isn't me trying to sell Awesome as a service or anything like that, or any e-commerce brand accounting companies. But this sort of stuff doesn't get covered by normal accountants. Believe me, that any normal accountant that's doing a builder's books or a plumber's book, something like that, they're just not going to know this stuff, and you're going to lose out on them that hundreds or possibly thousands of pounds in between that gap there, and many other things. Just to let you know, I've been stung in the past, and I have been there. So yeah, thanks for covering that, Timer. I've just covered this slightly, but we're going to it anyway. So you need to enter your VAT number once you get it into Amazon, and before they start not charging you on VAT, guys. So that's really important to mention there. Yeah, so you need to collect all receipts moving forward. So we just covered it and said that you need to go back and create a folder for anything, any items that you're going to be selling after you've become VAT registered. You need a VAT receipt for that. So it's a good idea to start collecting before. But moving forwards on a continuous basis, it's really important to collect every single receipt from every single transaction once you're past the threshold. So I've actually got a business manager. I'm lucky enough to have a business manager that does this for me. So he probably spends about 5 to 6 hours a week collecting my VAT invoices. Probably 3 to 5 actually. It's just things like Q4 here probably spend that sort of time. But it's really, really important. It is a really time-consuming process. But it's really important to create folders in, monthly order. But Awesome, I believe, have actually got a software and you can ping it to them an email, things like that. But whatever way you do it, you need to be collecting them. You need to have every single receipt. You can't just skip receipts, because then it's going to come back at you when you do your VAT return. So yeah, I'm not sure you've got any thoughts on that, Timer. Any issues that you've had with people not collecting VAT receipts?
Yeah, so one of my arbitrage clients is quite big, and one of the struggles he had was he was not able to collect those invoices. And I remember we were missing about nearly £6,000 worth of VAT only. I'm not talking about the actual purchase, 6,000. So in this quarter, he unfortunately had to pay that £6,000 extra. But then he hired a VA somewhere who then started collecting it. And then next quarter, we were able to reclaim all of that back because we got all of the invoices. but that £6,000 meant a lot for him because of his cash flow situations. So it can, especially when you're big enough, it can become a big deal. So yes, start from day one. Don't go into a situation where you're struggling later on.
Wow, that's incredible. Wow, 6,000 in VAT. Cool. So there's also a difference between knowing the difference between their sort of, so once again, correct me if I'm wrong, Timer, because I know things have changed on some products recently, like women's sanitary products, for example, but you've got 0% VAT, you've got 5% VAT, then you've got 20% VAT. Could you just briefly cover the difference between, what sort of products are 0%, 5%, 20%?
So majority of the products in UK are 20%, and unless specifically told it's not, they will be 0%, but they're 20%. But there are things like baby clothes, and there is insurance as well, which is exempt. But baby clothes, bakery items, which probably not related to arbitrage, but those are zero rated. But anything that you're getting off the retailers, they're definitely almost 20% items, except if it's something very specific, as you said, the sanitary towels and stuff. 5% is mainly for reduced item, for things like milk, meat, and food, stuff like that. So yeah, it's different categories of items into different VAT rate.
Yeah. So my advice to anyone watching would be to really get on top of that, so that you know yourself. It's not the accountant's job or the accounting job to do that for you. You need to understand that yourself. So I would really get on top of that. Get to understand it yourself. Whatever software you're using, whether it's BuyBot Pro or any of the others, you need to know what settings to put them on, so that you're calculating that properly. Because otherwise you could end up thinking that you're, say if it's a chocolate biscuit, right? If you've got a biscuit and it's covered in chocolate, that's 20% VAT, as far as I'm aware. If it's got no chocolate on it, it's 0% VAT. Certain things. So it can be quite a confusing minefield. So you do need to know how to understand this yourself. And then you've got like BuyBot Pro's got like a VAT override thing and things like that. So you can work out your correct profit. So my advice would be to spend 2 days getting your head around that as well. Just understanding whether you're actually making the profit that you think you're making, because you've got to make sure that, you've got the correct VAT applicable on them items. So awesome. And then moving on from that, you've got different types of VAT registration you can do, Timer, haven't you? So you've got the standard rate or you've got the flat rate. So can you just sort of explain that and for arbitrage specifically, what you advise, or is it different for each case, or what's the difference?
I think it dials down to how big your margin is. So if let me explain. So standard rate is where you charge your end consumer 20%, and then you claim back anything that you paid VAT on, your accountancy fees, your marketing, your product that you bought with invoices, and you do the calculation minus plus, and you pay the difference back to HMRC. Flat rate is simple. Whatever you've sold, how much you've sold it for, you'll pay a certain percentage of that to HMRC. Normally the percentage is around 6 to 7%, and it can go up to 12% depending on what you're doing. So if you think that you will not be able to claim so much, like for example, you're dealing with boots only and you're not able to get those invoices, then it's just best to do flat rate, because you're not claiming anything back and you're just paying a small percentage of all of your sales. But if you have a lot of purchases and you have a lot of items that you can claim back on, then obviously do that, because it will reduce your balance on it. So with Amazon arbitrage, it's probably the standard rate will be the best, because margin is so low that you don't make that big of a difference with flat rate, and standard would be your best way to go.
Okay, that's cool. It's good to clear that up, because a lot of people do get confused between the flat rate and standard rate. So yeah, it's good. Obviously, check with your accountants, guys, before you just obviously go ahead and decide for yourself that your standard rate. You do want to check and run through with your accountant. They should be happy to talk to you. Just run through them, your situation, and they should advise you. Something on the screen. They should advise you whether you should be standard or flat rate. Awesome. Cool. And in terms of paying your VAT bill and things like that, so Timer, can you choose to have a quarterly bill, just for the audience sake? Can you choose to have a quarterly bill or a yearly bill, or does it have to be every quarter? This is for the standard rate,
So the way it works is you can go monthly, and the people who go monthly are those who get a lot of refunds from HMRC because they're selling zero rated items. You can go quarterly, which is the most standard one. 90% of the businesses are on quarterly, or you can go annually, but the annually only is for the submissions. The payment is still done on quarterly basis. So you technically only have two choice, monthly or quarterly for the payments. But then submission has its own different options.
Okay, that's great, awesome. And guys, just as a heads up with the VAT registration, things like that, it can be quite a big hit with the VAT registration. Like I just paid about £4,000 on my last quarter for my VAT for that, just for that quarter. So you need to make sure that you are on top of your cash flow a bit to make sure that you've got the money to pay for that bill. However, Timer, I'm not sure what you think about this, but what I do is actually start purchasing more just before I've got to pay the bill, so that it deducts some of that actual, you know what I mean, so that my bill's not so big, if that makes sense. What do you think about that? Is that
yeah, so look, the VAT works in a different way to tax. So if you were purchasing a lot of goods before your corporation tax deadline, that will not actually make an effect because everything goes to inventory. And then goes to expense afterward once you sell it.
okay?
But with VAT, it's simple. When you pay it, when you pay the VAT, that's when you can claim it as well. So yes, if you're almost at the VAT period, your 3 months are finishing soon, do a bulk purchase that will count toward your VAT calculation.
Yeah, we'll reduce some of the VAT because you've just obviously bought more goods, which was deducted. Yeah. So that's something I didn't understand until a bit later on. So that can help sometimes, can't it? Awesome. So that's pretty much all of the main questions I sort of had, and that's what I found really overwhelming. Timer, I'm not sure if you want to give sort of, I don't know, anything that you think I've missed, or the most common issue, or the most common questions that you have about that, or just some top tips, or a bit of both, or I'll just pass it over to you for a bit if you want, if you've got anything you want.
Sure. I think what I'll do is I'll share my experience with what I've done and gone through with Amazon arbitrage clients, especially.
Yeah.
So one of the major things that I struggled with initially, and I had to do a lot of reading on it, is what happens when you register for VAT, and what happens to the items that you did before registration. So for example, you have a stock, you bought almost, your stock level at the moment is sitting at 2000 units, right? And tomorrow you have to register for VAT. Now, when you start selling those items, you will start charging VAT, but because this was before VAT period, you won't be able to claim anything back on it. So you're kind of losing out on those sales. So the way it normally works is, on the day of your effective date of VAT registration, you have to calculate how much stock you have and how much VAT you paid on it. And you can claim that VAT on your next return.
I didn't do that.
Because that could be a big hit, basically, because if you have £1,000 worth of stock, you can claim probably 20% of that. But the problem is that you have to specifically calculate how much stock you have and how much VAT you have paid on that stock. One of the main problem with that is that you probably have bought something like 10 different items from Boots, and out of those 10 you only have 4 left. So now you have to manually calculate how much VAT you have paid on those 4 and then claim that back. So it could be a bit of a pain, but it is a big money that we're talking about. So maintaining your stock level from day one and understanding how that is moving is really important, because at that day, you don't have to do this big exercise. You already have all of the information.
Wow. Massive tip, because I've obviously lost out on potentially thousands there. That's a massive tip.
Yeah. Especially if you're dealing with low value item but a big high numbers of inventory, then definitely. So yeah, so the way we come across this, obviously for this client, we had to literally sit down and do the stock count and look for the invoices and check how much it is. But the easiest way would have been if you're maintaining your inventory level on your accounting software from day one, then it would have been much easier, because your accounting software would have told you how much inventory you have. Another tip for Amazon arbitrage would be, as Hayden said himself, make sure you're dealing with the people who or businesses that can provide you VAT invoices. But don't be scared of going to businesses who do not provide VAT invoices, because still you're selling those products. You might lose out on the 20% that you can have claim back, but you're still selling it for 20% extra. So it's still a good thing because you're making more sales, but it just means that you will be able to claim less back. Yeah, I think though, and just maintain your books. You need to have your data for 5 years. If not, then you can be in trouble. One more thing, £85,000 is based on 12 months rolling period. So I see a lot of confusion in that. What 12 months am I looking at? How do I reach to that £85,000? So what happens is, let's say you started in January and your 12 months period ended in December. You didn't make 85, you made about 60, right? Now you're in February. What you need to do is take January out, add February in. So it's like a rolling system. You take 1 month off, you add 1 month, and then now you see from February to 31st of January how much sales you made. Was it £85,000? And you continue doing this until in 12 months period you have £85,000, and then you get another few days to register. Yeah, there is a lot of confusion. People think just any 12 months, last 12 months, £85,000. That's not how it works. So just be mindful of that. And yeah, I think those are some solid things that I've learned in my Amazon arbitrage journey. So that's what I would say would be to take care of.
Awesome, that's great. Thanks for that, Timer. So guys, everyone watching, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you do have any more questions, and obviously I will eventually get round to it. I do get quite a few comments on the channel, but I will eventually get round to it, or post in the free Facebook group that I've got. And Awesome, because I use Awesome as well, they're actually linked to my Facebook group, so you can just tag Awesome UK in my group, and they will answer that question for you within due time. So Awesome. Yes, as I said, I do use Awesome myself. So as I say, I will leave a link below if you do want to, sort of check them out. But as I say, feel free. So obviously, you don't have to mention my name. I don't mind. But obviously, you just get £100 off the first month if you do. So thanks for joining us, Timer. It's been a pleasure. I hope you all found that really, really valuable. As I say, I wish I had something like this when I was switching to VAT, because it can be an absolute minefield. And I know that I spent about 2 or 3 days just absolutely, going crazy, using the wrong accountant at the time, and it was just, it was a bit of a mess. So I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks again, Timer, for joining us.
Not to risk. Thank you for having me.
See you all soon. Thanks very much. Bye bye.
All right, so I'm going to stop recording.